Hello, everyone. I'm basically a fool. A fool in every thought and action. A fool in every topic or field. On this YouTube platform, I see people sharing useful knowledge for others to study and learn, or showing off their talents and getting praised. So I've decided to share with you my mistaken, foolish thoughts, so everyone can take away some helpful lessons. Today, I'm going to tell you about 10 wrong-headed thoughts I have when I'm in love. For example, I blindly believe she truly loves me, even after spotting signs she's secretly seeing someone else. I'm willing to spend big when I'm compared to her ex, and that time I tattooed her name on my arm when we'd only just started dating? Pretty interesting stuff. Please note that I share my stories in a cheerful, friendly spirit. I'm not a love expert. This video won't just help you draw some useful lessons. It can also help you drift off to sleep or relax more effectively. Please like and subscribe. If you want to know what a fool like me thinks in a specific situation, leave it in the comments. I'll analyze it for you. Thanks so much, and let's get to the story. I blindly believed she truly loved me, even though I kept seeing signs she was secretly seeing someone else. Sunday mornings in Denver usually come with gentle sun and dry wind, the kind of weather that makes going out for brunch make perfect sense. I'm obsessed with the Eggs Benedict at the spot near my place. It's just a few minutes' walk. This story begins on mornings like that, when I noticed she had a second phone. At first, I told myself, it's probably work. In the US, lots of companies issue separate phones, right? I even felt reasonable about it. Now and then, I happened to see a strange name pop up on Google Calendar. I looked and hit dismiss. A small voice in my head said, "Don't overreact. Being busy with work is normal." The truth is, I was afraid of the truth, so I rationalized everything to spare myself the headache. I started acting like an enthusiastic assistant to my girlfriend. I handled her morning coffee, I bought lunch, and brought it over. She said she had to work late tonight because of a makeup meeting. I agreed immediately, turned on Netflix to watch basketball, and pretended I wasn't sad. I didn't ask who she was meeting or where, the way someone who cares about his girlfriend would ask. Afraid of the feeling of betrayal, I reassured myself, trust her, don't let your mind run wild. Gradually, I saw more odd signs. Do Not Disturb was on more often. Calendar alerts for Pilates with L, even though I'd never heard of L. I asked her. She said, "Just a coworker." I told myself, sure, Denver has lots of people who go by initials. One night, she set a new passcode on the iPad. She said it was to protect company data. I was quick to believe it because not thinking let me sleep. Trusting spared me from facing the feeling that I might be losing the person I loved. Then came the fateful Sunday morning. I jogged through the Reno area, sweat not yet dry, and ducked into a packed brunch place. I stood waiting for a table, glanced inside, and saw her sitting across from a man, laughing easily, their hands touching as they both reached for a fork, the space between them close enough that there wasn't much left to imagine. My heart jolted so hard I could hear it in my ears. I could have made a scene, but I'm the sort who keeps it polite to the very end. I stepped outside for a deep breath, then walked back in, passed by their table, and smiled. "Hey, what a coincidence." She started for a second, then introduced him. "This is a guy from marketing. We're discussing an idea." He stuck out his hand and delivered the classic line, "I've heard a lot about you." It felt like watching a staged movie scene where everyone knows their lines. That night, I asked gently. I figured if I asked tactfully, she'd see me as mature. "Who was the guy from this morning? He showed up in the calendar the other day with the initial J, didn't he?" She answered calmly, "A friend. We're on the same project. Sometimes we grab a meal to brainstorm." It sounded entirely reasonable, and I very much wanted to believe it. I clung to the project explanation like a life preserver, because if I didn't, I'd have to face the fact that I'd ignored too many signs. A few days later, while I was getting dinner ready, she said she wanted to talk. She admitted she was getting to know someone else. She said it lightly, the kind of, "I'm confused. I don't want to hurt you." Hearing it, I felt my gut drop like I missed a step on the stairs. I didn't smash dishes, I didn't shout, I just sat down, looked at the pan still smoking, and felt angrier at myself than at her. Angry because I'd known for a long time, but kept forcing every crooked line of evidence straight. Angry because I'd trained myself to fixate on words and ignore repeated behavior. 2 phones, last-minute schedule changes, a new passcode, unfamiliar names in the calendar, and an intimate brunch. No single sign proved anything, but together they were unmistakable. In the days after, I went to work like a machine. Driving on I-25, my mind replayed every moment. I remembered the times I laughed it off, the times I said, "I understand," just to avoid asking more. I remembered the stab in my chest the second I saw their hands touch, that feeling I swept away with the thought, "Don't be overly sensitive." I also got more honest with myself about why I'd behaved that way. I was afraid of losing her, afraid of weekends alone, of sitting by myself at a two-top in a brunch place, of texting friends to tell a story where I'm the pathetic victim. Trust repeated behavior over words, and if you see a cluster of ambiguities, ask directly. Set a deadline for transparency. If the value of honesty is not met, choose to leave to protect your self-respect. It doesn't sound romantic, but it saved me from the spiral of self-deception. I ask, I listen, I watch what people do over many days and weeks, and if the answer doesn't appear in behavior, I give myself permission to close the door gently. Not so someone else loses, so I don't lose. I'm willing to spend big whenever I'm compared to her ex. On a Chicago rooftop, the wind was so fierce it felt like it might blow the cocktail right out of my hand. From up here, the river ran a deep blue between glass towers, and far-off Lake Michigan glittered. She stood beside me, hair blowing across her face, pointing at the tiny lights on Navy Pier. Then, in an even voice, she said her ex had given her a birthday necklace, surprised her with a weekend trip to Miami, and once ordered the designer bag she'd wanted for ages. I nodded and smiled, and a very foolish thought lit up in my head. I could do even more amazing things for her. Why did I flip into that mode? Probably because I grew up believing money was the fastest way to prove your worth. When I started working in the U.S., people around me bragged about the latest camera deals, hard-to-get concert tickets. Online, everyone posts, "He surprised me. My boyfriend spoils me." I looked at it all and decided love was a stage and I had to play the lead with money. If I spent a lot, I would surely be better than the ex. And deep down, I was afraid of coming up short in any comparison. So my mind wrote a script. This week, a gift. Next week, a luxury experience. The week after, a high-end trip. The next day, I took her down the Magnificent Mile, deliberately passing a handbag store. She said, "Pretty, fancy," and I heard it like the opening drum roll. I walked in and swiped. A bank alert flashed. "You've exceeded 80% of your limit." I ignored it and told myself, "I'll pay it off next month." She held the new bag, face glowing. My heart swelled as if I'd just scored a massive point. 2 days later, I booked a nighttime helicopter tour over Chicago. The checkout page asked, "Pay in full" or "non-refundable deposit," and I chose "Pay in full" for the 10% discount. The total made me break into a sweat. With gaps on the calendar, I filled them with a fancy dinner at a riverfront restaurant. I checked the menu online and swallowed at the prices. I reassured myself just one more time. I even booked a Riverview hotel room for a night to remember. My primary card was about to hit the ceiling, so I opened a Buy Now, Pay Later app for the rest. An APR notice popped up. I hit agree in half a second. I told myself, I'll take extra shifts tomorrow. I'll make the money back. I liked the feeling of laying something on the table that made people gasp. On that rooftop, when she listed what her ex had bought, my mind instantly set a target: buy more. I didn't notice whether she said how he treated her when she was sick, whether he listened, whether he kept his word and showed up on time. I only cared about the stories of her ex's expensive gifts. The climax came one night when we had dinner at a very fancy restaurant, our table right by the window, lights rippling across the river. She wore a red dress and carried the bag I'd given her. Everything felt like a movie. After we ate, I grabbed the check and handed over my card with a very confident smile. The server left and came back a moment later, gently saying, "I'm sorry, your card was declined." I thought I'd misheard. I handed him a second card. He returned again. "I'm sorry, this one didn't go through either." Panic flickered. Under the table, I opened my banking app and saw 2 over-limit alerts. My face burned. She looked at me, didn't blame me right away. She asked if I was okay. I said I'd call the bank. I called, hit the hotline, and luckily they agreed to bump my limit a little, just enough to pay. I signed with a hand still trembling. Walking out, I tried to smile and suggested a stroll. She stayed quiet. On the way back, she said plainly, "You promised too many things. I thought you could actually do them." I was about to protest, "I can afford all that." That night, she said she wouldn't stay at the hotel after all. She called a car home, taking the bag I'd bought her. I stood at the hotel entrance, watching the car pull away, the river wind slapping my face cold. I walked back and caught my reflection in the elevator mirror. I looked like an actor who'd just fallen out of his role. The shame weighed on me, not because of the money, but because I'd turned love into an auction. Meanwhile, my credit card debt had hit the ceiling, and fees kicked in. The helicopter tour was over, and all that remained were a few photos on my phone. Looking at them made me feel stifled. The hotel room was non-refundable. I had to ask for extra shifts and call the bank to switch to a longer installment plan. At night, I lay in bed listening to the wind whistle through the window seam, turning the same question over and over. Why did I push myself into this? The answer was obvious. I'd treated love as a stage to show off with money. I was afraid of losing to her ex in comparison, so I chose the quickest route, spend more than anything she had mentioned. I've slowly learned not to turn love into a bidding war. From now on, I set a clear dating budget before I make plans. How much is the cap? No exceeding it. I'll prioritize meaningful experiences over price tags, cooking dinner at home, walking by the river, and I'll watch for one core proof. Does the other person value my effort, sincerity, listening, and keeping my word, or do they only compare and demand expensive gifts? If it's the former, I'll keep going. 3. I think her ex is a threat to our happiness. Miami is blistering hot and humid. The moment I step outside, my hair frizzes and my t-shirt sticks to my back. I've been here 2 weeks, we've been dating 3 months, everything's smooth, until one afternoon she casually mentions her ex also lives nearby, in Brickell. Instantly, a full-length series starts playing in my head. He's probably handsome, has a big friend group, knows this city better than I do, and knows the Latin spots with the thumping music. From that thought, I slide down a familiar slope, measuring myself against a ghost from the past. Back home, I open Instagram. I type his name, public account, photos of the shoreline, the gym, a graffiti wall in Wynwood, a few rooftop shots with his crew. I zoom in on each image like I'm reading a treasure map, checking who likes what, who comments. I save a few story highlights to comb through later that night. When I'm anxious, I hunt for data to control everything. The more I dig, the more I picture worst-case scenarios, and my brain has a habit of magnifying risk, making me feel like I'm protecting the relationship. The next day, I take her for Cuban sandwiches in Little Havana. As soon as we start eating, I pepper her with questions about whether she's going anywhere this week, which friends, when. She looks a little surprised and says it's a girlfriend's birthday, a few coworkers, address on Brickell Key. I nod and smile while instantly committing every detail to memory. Over the following days, I act like a fool. She says she's going to the gym. I check the time, estimate 75 minutes, and if she's 10 minutes late, my chest tightens. She posts a smoothie from her usual spot. I zoom to inspect the blur behind her. She says she's working late. I open Google Maps and calculate the drive from her office to Brickell. I tell myself I'm being careful, but really I'm pasting suspicion onto everything. Comparing to the past plus a need for certainty makes me want to control the outside world. Control can dull short-term fear, but it erodes long-term trust between us. It culminates on Saturday night. She's at a birthday in a rooftop apartment, Latin music spilling from the elevator. I'm not on the guest list, but I've got the address from a friend of a friend's story. I Uber over and tell the guard I'll pop up to say congrats and head out. Upstairs, the sea breeze is cool. The smells of grilled meat and perfume mingle. I stand tucked beside the ice chest, eyes scanning like a security camera. I spot him. It's definitely him. White shirt, sleeves rolled, laughing with his friends. My heart hammers. I don't make a scene. I do something more insidious. I loop the room, ask each person a casual question, pretending to be friendly while mining for intel. I ask a woman, "What does that guy do?" Ask a man, "How long did they date?" People look puzzled. Who even am I? She sees me. Surprise first, then a frown. "Why are you here?" I give a thin smile. "I came to say congrats." I say that, but my eyes are still locked on him. She pulls me aside and says, "It's my friend's birthday. You showing up unannounced puts me in a tough spot, especially with my ex here." I answer, "I just want to make sure I'm not being put in a bad position." She sighs, eyes tired. Back at the table, I still hover, eavesdropping. I watch her every gesture, weigh each glance, tallying in my head. Everything I do sends one blunt message: you are not free. When it's cake time, everyone sings, and he's standing next to my girlfriend. I spring up and move closer to observe. Someone looks at me and whispers to someone else. I see her cheeks flush, and not from the drinks. That's when I realize I'm out of place at a birthday party, and she's embarrassed in front of her coworkers because of me. After the party, in the elevator down to the lobby, she speaks softly but firmly. I'm suffocating. I rush to explain. "Miami is full of temptations. You don't understand how this feels." She shakes her head. I can't live with someone who keeps combing through my past to measure today's trust. I want to break up. The glass doors slide open, night wind rushes into the lobby, and I'm left with a heap of mistakes. I don't shout or chase. My head just feels heavy, like it's been sun-scorched all day. That night, I sit in a diner on Biscayne Boulevard and order a strong Cuban coffee. In the window, I see a tired guy holding a phone, opening and closing Instagram. I text her a short line, "I'm sorry." Then I set the phone face down. To be exact, I didn't lose because her ex is better. I lost because I wrecked everything myself. Control isn't how you love someone. It's the quickest way to make a relationship collapse. The next morning, I walk along South Beach. As the sun rises, the water glitters. I open notes and write a few lines as a reminder to myself. I realized I used transparency as a pretext to demand schedules and show up unannounced. I tried to protect love with my own fear. If you were me, please focus on the present quality of the relationship instead of the past. Trust is built on just enough transparency, clear agreements, and the ability to self-regulate your own emotions. Just enough transparency means the two of you agree on the basics: where you're going, what needs to be shared, what boundaries with an ex look like, and leave each other room to breathe for the rest. Clear agreements mean speak early and plainly. Don't speculate and then act alone. Self-regulation means when worry hits, set the phone down, take a 15-minute walk, call your best friend, or tell your partner with an I statement, "I'm anxious, I need a little reassurance." Comparing to the past ruins the present faster than it protects it. I wish I'd learned this before the birthday cake and her flushed gaze, but better late than never. From now on, if I love someone, I'll choose to stand beside them in the present, not skulk after shadows that slipped out of the frame long ago. I tattooed her name on my arm when we had just started dating. We flew to Las Vegas on a scorching weekend. The kind of weather where the moment you stepped past the hotel doors, hot wind slapped your face, perfume mingled with the smell of fried food, and slot machines hummed like fans. I drove a rental down the strip, feeling, in a strange way, like I matched the city's vibe. An idea popped into my head that felt so right. If everything fit this well, why not save it with something permanent? I turned to her and said, "What if we get each other's names on our wrists, like a promise of love?" We went to a tattoo shop in the Arts District. Inside, the walls were lined with framed lettering samples, black leather chairs, and the sharp scent of ink. The artist asked, "Are you two sure names aren't something to joke about?" I nodded and grinned. She nodded too, and we both looked at each other, beaming. We posted a blurry story, just our wrists and some gauze with medical tape. Friends sent hearts, a few teased us. Reading the messages only made me more certain I'd done the right thing. The next day, we hit a buffet, watched the Bellagio fountains, and wandered through bright, noisy casinos. It felt like someone had slapped a gorgeous filter on the two of us, vivid, giddy, not thinking too hard. After the trip, we went back to daily life. She worked morning shifts at a cafe. I returned to the office in Anaheim. We didn't talk much because we were both busy. Some nights she went to bed early. When I asked, why not video call, she said she was tired. I looked down at my wrist, saw her name there, and suddenly felt like I owned her. From then on, I checked messages more often and pushed her to chat more throughout the day. 2 weeks later, we argued over something tiny. I asked what we should do that weekend. She said she wanted to stay home because she was tired. I said, then why get the tattoos if we can't show up for each other? The air went heavy. She was quiet for a while, then said, "You're using the tattoo to pressure me." The words hit me straight on. I fired back, and my tone got uglier by the minute. The conversation ended with the little blue ticks appearing and disappearing, and finally, "You're blocked." That night, I sat alone at the dining table, the tattoo still a little rough as it hadn't fully healed. I took a photo, zoomed in on the name. It looked like a tiny sign staked into my skin, and I felt I'd been reckless. The next morning, I went to a tattoo shop. The artist glanced at me and shrugged. Happens all the time. I nodded and asked about cover-ups. He suggested a bold, abstract band, geometric shapes that would hide the letters well. I agreed. The needle ran over the exact same spot, hurting twice as much. It felt like it wasn't just ripping skin, it was scraping at my pride. I lay there listening to the machine whine, thinking about how 2 weeks earlier I'd been in this same chair, face bright with excitement, grinning. Now my lips were pressed tight and my free hand gripped the edge of the seat. Afterward, I taped it up, went home, turned on the faucet, rinsed gently, put on ointment, and looked at the new jet black band hugging my wrist. It didn't look bad. Honestly, it looked kind of cool. But every time I looked at it, I was reminded of how rash I'd been about love. That weekend, my family got together for a backyard barbecue. My mom saw my wrist and frowned. "Another tattoo? I told you before." I dodged around it a bit, then half-joked my way through the story. Everyone shook their heads. My uncle laughed. "That's youth. Lessons stick when you pay the tuition." It lightened me a little, but that night I still stared at the ceiling, thinking about the extra tuition I was paying. I started looking up laser removal, how to book, prices. They said several sessions, a few $100s each, maybe blistering or slight scarring. I opened my notebook and did the math. The Vegas trip, the first tattoo, the cover-up, and now removal. One impulse to bottle a feeling had opened a whole chain of hassles. In the days after, I wore a bigger watch to cover it. On Zoom, I kept my hand under the table. At the gym, when someone said, "Nice band tattoo," I smiled, "Thanks," and changed the subject. Sometimes I still pulled up that old story, the blurry wrists, the medical tape, the two of us smiling. Each time I watched it, I understood that version of me a little better. Let time test commitment. Any symbol, vow, or mark on skin or on things should only come after both people have shown steady behaviors over time. Before there's repeated evidence of respect, calm communication, keeping promises, and solving conflicts together, don't rush to use something irreversible to lock in feelings. Early on, if you need a marker, choose gestures that are reversible and gentle, ones that don't harm your body or put pressure on the other person. Finish a course together, set a standing weekly date, keep a shared journal, plant a pot of green, and tend it together. When those behaviors stand firm through a few seasons, if you still want a symbol, it won't be too late to get one then. 5. I'm ready to help with any of her financial requests whenever she says there's an emergency. That night, Houston felt damp, like someone had just misted the whole city. I'd just left the H-E-B parking lot, arms clutching a paper bag full of eggs and milk, when my phone buzzed. "Hey, there's a family emergency. I need to fly home tonight." The text came with a call. Her voice trembled. She said a relative had been admitted to the hospital, they needed a deposit before surgery, and her card was locked because of an international transaction. When I heard it, my heart sped up, not from romance, but because I felt I had a chance to be a hero. Lines fired off in my head. A good boyfriend acts right away. Dragging your feet is irresponsible. It looks rude to ask too many questions when someone's in trouble. I got back to my midtown apartment, set the bag down, and before I could even put the milk in the fridge, I opened my banking app. She sent an account number and said, "Please transfer $400 so I can book the ticket first. I'll pay you back tomorrow." I hit transfer immediately. In that moment, I felt trustworthy, competent, able to solve problems. The truth was, I was trying to prove myself. I was afraid that if I asked for documents or suggested a video call, she'd think I was stingy or didn't trust her. That's the afraid to lose points mindset any man can have. The next morning, she texted again. "The hospital is asking for a $1,200 deposit. Here's the invoice." The photo of the bill was blurry, the paper's corner curled. I stared at it and tried to make it look reasonable. I told myself, someone in a panic takes a quick shot. I sent more. Then came, "The lawyer needs $600 to process urgent travel papers. A $350 change fee because the flight was delayed. Uber to the airport $90 because of surge pricing." Each time she said, "I hate to ask, I'll pay you back tomorrow." I felt myself edging closer to her heart. In reality, two things were pulling me along. First, I'd already sent the first transfer and wanted to keep a consistent image. My pride saying, "If you help, help all the way." Second, I was afraid that if I stopped halfway, I'd become the bad guy in the story. I skipped verification because I wanted to hear, "You're incredibly trustworthy." I had doubts, of course. Once I suggested FaceTiming right there at the hospital to lift her spirits, and she said her battery was at 2%, borrowing a charge in the hallway where the Wi-Fi was weak. Another time I said, "Send a clear PDF of the bill so I can pay it directly with my card." And she said the hospital only accepted internal transfers because of policy. I'm not living on another planet. I know hospitals in the US usually take cards. But I reassured myself, maybe this case was special. I kept sending because I was already in the middle of the bridge. And in the middle of the bridge, the wind is strong. turning back is embarrassing. Going forward is nerve-wracking. By the 5th time, the bank called. The agent's voice was polite. "Hello, we're seeing multiple unusual transactions at night. Can you confirm them?" At the word unusual, my stomach clenched. I confirmed, palms sweaty. After hanging up, I texted her. "Let's meet this afternoon. Take me to see your relative or lawyer so I can help directly. I also have a friend at the hospital who can check." Message sent. The typing dots appeared, then vanished. A moment later, she replied, "I'm in an Uber. The driver's on the highway, so there's no signal." I sighed. Since when does a highway in Houston lose signal? I told myself. That night, I texted again. "Can I come by your place or meet at a nearby cafe?" She said, "I'm heading to the airport tonight. Let's talk tomorrow." The next morning, silence. Noon, silence. By afternoon, my messages showed sent but not seen. I called and the automated voice chimed, "The number you have dialed is temporarily unavailable." I tried texting from another number, still nothing. That's when a neon sign lit up in my head. "Hey, wake up!" I reopened the invoices. The paper edges were identical, the font strange, the dates misaligned. That evening, I went to the bank branch on Westheimer. The staff checked and said most of the transfers went through a quick pay app, so refunds would be very difficult. I still filed a fraud report, contacted the police, and saved the entire message history. I walked out to the parking lot, Houston still hot and humid, feeling ashamed, angry at myself, and sad. Not just because of the money, but because I had wagered my own trust without protecting it. A week later, I told the story to a buddy who's a nurse at Memorial Hermann. He said gently, "If you really want to help, take them to the cashier and swipe a card into the patient's file. If they need a lawyer, call the office and ask about fees and a contract. Anyone who needs help but dodges transparency, stalls meeting, or refuses direct payment, I stop right there." Boundaries aren't coldness. Boundaries are how you protect both your kindness and the integrity of the relationship. I just need to remember that one thing and act on it consistently. I need to be clear. Money and love need firm boundaries. No matter how much I love or cherish someone, I shouldn't lend large sums of money without a real foundation of trust, documents, and a concrete repayment plan. If I want to help transparently. Call the hospital together. Go meet the person who needs support, or pay the service directly with an invoice in the beneficiary's name. Anyone who dodges transparency, stalls meeting, or refuses direct payment, I stop right there. Boundaries aren't coldness. Boundaries are how you protect both your kindness and the integrity of the relationship. I just need to remember that one thing and act on it consistently. I feel happy when women I've just started seeing act jealous. On a Friday night in Brooklyn, I asked her to go see an indie band in a small venue with sticky floors and pink-purple neon. We stood right by the bar, a wall of old posters behind us. I ordered 2 cans of beer and smiled at the server because she'd asked how to pronounce the band's name. Everything was normal until I saw my girlfriend lean over and steal a quick glance at my phone when the screen lit up. She frowned a little and went quiet. I felt a little high. Oh, she's jealous. She must really like me. I used to be afraid of being left. Back in college, in California, my ex vanished after a text that said, "I need time." Ever since, I've carried this worry that anyone close to me will walk away. So when I see signs of jealousy, I spin them in my favor. If someone's holding on tight, I must be valuable, and the relationship must be safe. The music kicked in, drums thundering, but I couldn't focus anymore. I turned, took her hand, and whispered, "It's nothing. I just asked for directions to the area near the stage." She nodded, but her eyes still simmered. I pulled out my phone and messaged the guys, "Canceled the plan. We'll figure it out tomorrow. I'm heading home early with my girlfriend tonight." I was supposed to grab late-night wings with them after the show, but I canceled. In my head, that was how to reassure my girlfriend and prove my love. It didn't stop there. Near the merch table, I turned on location sharing on my iPhone for her. I even said, "How about I give you my Instagram, Facebook, and email passwords so you can feel at ease?" The truth was, I was afraid of losing her, so I wanted her to be able to control me so I could feel calm. Midway through the second set, she shot another glare toward the bar. The server from earlier walked by and gave a polite smile. My girlfriend stepped in front of her and asked, point blank, "What were you talking about with my boyfriend earlier?" The server hesitated and explained they'd only talked about the menu and the stage. Then my girlfriend asked again, "Why were you looking at his phone?" Things started getting loud. Security came over. "Please take it outside. Don't disturb other guests." And just like that, we were escorted out right as the band was playing their best song. On a Williamsburg sidewalk, she laid down terms. "If you love me, delete every girl you've ever texted, block your ex's number, leave group chats that have women in them, and from now on, tell me in advance wherever you go." I nodded immediately, without thinking. The feeling in that moment was weirdly great. It was obvious she wanted to possess me. In the days after, I did exactly what she asked. Every morning I texted, 8:30 on the subway, 9:15 in the office, lunch at the corner deli, Zoom in the afternoon, home at night. I skipped lunch with female coworkers, turned down drinks for an old friend's birthday because there are some girls in the group. I unfollowed a few people on Instagram so I wouldn't have to answer, "Who's this?" I thought I was tending to her feelings. In reality, I was boxing myself in. One night, my phone died on the train. When I got home, there were 12 missed calls. She fired off questions while I scrambled for the charger. My heart pounded like I was sprinting. Living in constant report mode, a tiny glitch was enough to make me break into a sweat. I started lying to her. Instead of, "The meeting ran long," I said, "I stopped to buy a burrito," because I was afraid we'd end up in another argument. Little by little, I grew tense, slept poorly, and even avoided seeing anyone on weekends. My calendar emptied, but my head felt heavy. One Sunday afternoon, sitting in the basement laundry room, I felt like an employee filing daily reports to my own girlfriend. I suddenly remembered the feeling of being escorted out of the show. I remembered her stepping in front of the server. I asked myself outright, what is this thing I've been calling love? The answer was that I'd been confusing things. I mistook control for care, insecurity for romance, shrinking my life for proof of affection. That isn't love. After that realization, I tried to talk. I described how tired I felt and said I wanted to keep a minimal right to privacy, my phone, my friends, my personal time. I suggested boundaries. We agree on what makes us uneasy, but we don't control each other. At first, she pushed back. "You're changed." I kept my voice calm and repeated that what I wanted was respect and trust. I also owned my part. I'd agreed too quickly. I'd enabled her controlling way of loving. We argued for a few days. Things improved a bit, but the tension returned whenever I replied late. I won't go on about whether we stayed together, because what I learned matters more. By endorsing her controlling kind of love, I narrowed my life, gave up my freedom, and created needless lies. I don't want to live that way again. 7. I got excited and decided she really liked me after she said I was better than all the guys from her past relationships. Saturday evening BBQs in Austin are lively in that very Texas way. The smell of brisket drifting up, the guys tossing bean bags for cornhole, country music playing from a cheap Bluetooth speaker. I was standing there with a plate of meat, wiping sweat from my forehead, when she smiled at me and said a line that lit up my head like someone flipped on stage lights. "You really are better than all my exes." Just one sentence, but to me it was like a confirmed stamp. I nodded, my heart sped up, and in my head a whole plan for this budding romance sprang to life. That very night, I fast-tracked things. I pulled her to meet my close friends at the cafe in the Radio Coffee courtyard, sipping cold brew and chatting like we'd known each other 10 years. I dropped a message in the group chat, "Everyone come meet my girlfriend." Everything moved so fast I even thought I looked cool. The high made me overly optimistic. My brain connected scattered dots into one beautiful straight line, then called it destiny. The next week, I sent a link pitching a couples trip. "How about Fredericksburg this weekend? Light wine tour." She said it sounded nice, so I hit book now on the tour voucher, chose a non-refundable cabin because it was 15% off. I even made a Spotify playlist called You and I, stuffed with love songs. That night, I opened Pinterest and saved images of matching shoe racks, matching towels, matching mugs. To be precise, I was head over heels. Then I made an even bigger move, apartment hunting to live together. We scheduled a viewing for a one-bedroom in East Riverside, sunlight sliding through the windows in a flattering way. She said nice, clean, convenient for work. I translated those words into, "Yep, time to sign." The leasing agent mentioned a promotion. "Put down a deposit today to lock the rate." I signed and put money down right then and there. I even went shopping for the new place. An air fryer on sale, a minimalist white dinnerware set, a gray bath mat, 2 electric toothbrushes labeled his and hers. I lugged the boxes back to the room I still shared with a friend, sat in the middle of the pile, and laughed to myself. The truth is, I was rewarding the feeling of being needed. When someone praises me, I feel valuable. When I make a big move right after, I feel in control. That combo sends me over the moon. 3 weeks sped by like a tape on fast forward. I grabbed discounted plane tickets to New Orleans for the two of us, thinking shared memories would strengthen the relationship. In my head, the itinerary looked like a slide deck. Fly Friday, Cafe Beignets Saturday, stroll the French Quarter Sunday. At that point, I had almost forgotten to ask the basic question, was she actually ready? I was laser-focused on pushing this love project along a timeline I'd set myself. Then the climax hit out of nowhere. One Wednesday afternoon, we sat at Houndstooth Coffee on North Lamar. She stirred her drink, looked at me with a kind of apologetic softness, and said quietly, "I'm not ready to live together. I feel like everything's moving too fast. I need time." The line made me stumble like I'd tripped over a rock mid-run. I forced a smile and said, "It's okay, we can slow down." But in the days after, she slipped out of the plans. Fewer replies, fewer emojis, more busy with work. She wasn't going on the Fredericksburg tour anymore and wasn't sure about New Orleans either. Move-in for the apartment was coming up. So I awkwardly called the leasing office. They said once the deposit's paid, it's tough to get it back. If I canceled, I'd lose all or a big chunk. I read the fine print and finally saw the tiny words, non-refundable. I turned to the wine tour, voucher, non-refundable. The flights were changeable, but with a fee. I sat in the middle of my early bought boxes, feeling most mocked by the 2 electric toothbrushes, his and hers, staring at me like, "Guess you'll be playing solo." The air fryer was still brand new. The only thing I'd fried were a few bland scraps of potato. I started to feel embarrassed when friends asked, "So, when are you moving into the new place?" I mumbled that I'd probably postpone. One night I drove to the complex alone, stood out in the parking lot, and looked up at the lights in the 3rd floor window. I understood something in a very everyday way. I had put down money on a scenario, not on a mutual agreement. Her compliment at that barbecue was probably just the pleasant feeling of standing next to a decent person on a lovely afternoon. I did a rough tally of the damage. The apartment deposit gone, plus cancellation fees. The early purchases, some returnable, some with restocking charges, some that were already past the window. The New Orleans trip, I bumped the ticket to another month, not sure who I'd go with. More than the money, it was the feeling of the floor dropping out. One moment I was high, the next I was in a hollow. After a few quiet weeks, I texted her, "If you need time, that's okay. I need to love more slowly too." She thanked me and said she wanted to focus on work for now. I taped the boxes shut and managed to return a few things. The apartment deposit, I let go. A compliment is a fleeting feeling. Commitment only shows up when time and repeated actions have stacked up long enough. A rule for myself: don't make big decisions in a rush of euphoria. From now on, if someone tells me I'm better than the ex, I'll smile, say thank you, and let time do the talking. I'll give the relationship a 3 to 6 month trial. No moving in, no joint contracts, no trips. During that stretch, I'll watch 3 things: whether our values align, for example, how they treat servers, views on money, whether our habits mesh, bedtime, phone use when we're out, punctuality, and whether our goals point the same way: work, family, where to live. If those 3 are verified by repeated actions, then big decisions are worth making. But if it's only a handful of compliments at a brisket-scented barbecue, I'll leave it as a pleasant memory, not paperwork that needs my signature. 8. I acted distant to test her. That afternoon in San Jose, the light was a pale gold, and the wind rustled through the palms along Santana Row. After our walk, she and I shared a bowl of ice cream at a little stand near the movie theater. We'd only been on a few dates: coffee at Chromatic Coffee, a stroll through the Japantown Farmers Market, a night of live music in the Sofa District. Everything felt easy, fun, no pressure. As we said goodbye, she smiled and said she was free next Thursday night. I nodded. Driving home on 280, I turned on the radio, and at an interchange, a very foolish idea popped up: pretend to be distant and see if she would scramble. Why did I come up with that stunt? Honestly, I was afraid of rejection. Once, I confessed too soon and got shut down flat. Since then, I've believed I shouldn't show my feelings first. Let the other person come to me. Add to that all the hand-me-down lines like, if they're genuine, they'll take the initiative, or those online clips telling men to save face and to test the other person's interest. I heard it so often, it stuck. The very next day, she texted a photo of a Korean dish and asked if I'd tried it. I saw the message pop up while I was sitting at my screen in an office near North 1st Street. I deliberately left it there for 15 minutes, then replied with a short line saying I hadn't tried it. In my head, I started calculating, like I was measuring customer feedback, how long she would take to text back, how many emojis she'd use. The day after, she suggested trying a taco spot on Santa Clara Street. I said I was busy with the sprint. The deadline had arrived. Not a total lie, but I knew full well I could make time. I dodged. I waited to see if she'd propose another day. She said, "Then let me know when you're free," with a smiling icon. I read it and stayed silent. By the weekend, we'd barely spoken. I felt hollow, but I kept pretending to be busy. I liked her photos less, even turned off message notifications so I wouldn't wrestle with the urge to check my phone constantly. I felt lighter not having to lay myself bare. I miss her. In my head, fewer texts meant I was composed. If she still reached out, it meant she cared. I turned a relationship into an A/B test and didn't tell the participant she was in a study. Week 2, she still opened with a few lines. "How's your week? I swung by San Pedro Square Market, so lively." I replied slowly, sentence by sentence, polite. She remained patient. I noted it inwardly. But at the same time, I felt her begin to pull back. The messages weren't long anymore. The emojis dropped off. One evening, when I checked in first, she said she was getting home late, tired, we'd talk another time. I worried a little, then realized, wait, wasn't I the one testing her? How did I suddenly become the one who cared more? Week 3, she tapered off sharply. No more check-ins, no suggestions to meet. I grew restless. My Clipper card clicked softly as I took the light rail home, my head flipping through our chats on repeat. I missed our first cafe at Chromatic Coffee, the way she split a croissant in two. I decided to quit the game. I texted, "I'm sorry for going quiet. I really like you, I'm just a little scared of moving fast. If you're free, should we get dinner tomorrow night?" I hit send, my heart pounding like a drum. She answered politely, "Thanks for being honest. I don't think we're a good match. These past few weeks it felt like you weren't very interested, so I stepped back, wishing you all the best." Reading it felt like a splash of cold water. I asked to talk in person. She agreed to meet at a bubble tea place near Valley Fair. In person, she was gentle. I'm not angry. The feeling just faded. At first, I felt we clicked, but when you went quiet, I took it as a signal you didn't want to move forward. I don't want to be someone who has to cling to anyone. I need someone who's clear. The consequences were plain as day. A short-lived relationship killed by a test. No fight, no drama. It just withered and went out because I dodged direct communication. The sad part is there's no one to blame. She did exactly what an adult should do. Saw the cold signal and stopped. Kept her self-respect, protected her time. A few days later, I sent a one last text. I learned a valuable lesson. Thank you. Then I turned off my screen and stepped into the little backyard of my rented place, and the San Jose night was gently cool. I boiled it down to something simple. I never lacked time or was so busy I couldn't say one clear sentence. I lacked courage. I used a test to reduce the risk of getting hurt and forgot that the biggest risk is losing the right person by staying silent at the wrong moment. I replayed the time she reached out and I answered like a robot. That was when the bridge we were building had its beams pulled out by me. Direct communication beats any test. From now on, when I meet someone new, I state my needs and pace and listen to their response. A very everyday example. I like a few short texts every day for fun and meeting once on the weekend. If that feels too fast or too slow for you, tell me and I'll adjust. If the other person wants to go slower, I consider whether I'm comfortable. If not, I accept an early conclusion. No clinging, no going silent to make them guess. I also drop the face-saving tricks like replying slowly on purpose, sending mixed signals, or disappearing to see who chases. I speak plainly and kindly. If we're a fit, we'll move forward naturally. If we're not, we both save time and respect each other. That's all. In a city that moves as fast as San Jose, I choose to go slow and be clear so the person beside me knows exactly where I stand. Seattle drizzles all day in that way where the rain clings to your jacket like a thin mist that refuses to fall. I took shelter in a cafe on Capitol Hill, the heater blowing warm air, the windows fogged with condensation. She sat at the next table, ordered an oat milk latte, and gazed out at the street. We started talking because I clumsily spilled powdered sugar across the table. She laughed, and that was our opening. 15 minutes later, her story was spilling out. An ex who cheated, fights, promises followed by lies, tears, apologies, and then repeats. I listened, cheeks burning on her behalf, my hand tightening around my cup. A familiar conviction lit up in my head. I could pull her out of this bog. I pictured myself as the lifeguard already standing on the shore. The next day, she texted that she needed to move out of her old apartment because she didn't want to see him anymore. I rented a small U-Haul, drove to Ballard through a light drizzle. We carried boxes of books and clothes and 2 potted plants that had been left on the porch. I paid the first month on a storage unit because her paycheck hadn't hit yet. Standing in that warehouse, cold as a walk-in cooler, watching the new lock click into place, I felt sure I was doing the right thing. In my head, everything looked very forward-moving, from A to B, from trouble to safety. 2 days later, her car died on Rainier Ave. She called, voice trembling. I dropped what I was doing and had it towed to a shop near Soto. The bill was hefty. New battery, new tires, oil change. She said she'd pay me back when she got paid. I nodded like it was nothing. That afternoon, I stocked her fridge myself. Eggs, milk, noodles, greens, because I didn't want her going back to the old kitchen to rummage for food. I turned myself into a one-man relief line. A week later, she said she wanted to see a lawyer to stop her ex from harassing her. I took a half-day off, drove her to an office downtown, and waited for hours in the lobby. The lawyer asked for a retainer. She looked at me and said she'd pay me back bit by bit. I nodded again. I felt busy and chivalrous, and because I was busy, I thought less about the real feelings. Was she opening her heart to me? Were we headed in the same direction? Or was I just sprinting because the rescue siren in my head wouldn't shut up? The climax arrived in the most ordinary way. On a heavy, rainy night, I drove her back to the temporary room she'd rented in Fremont. She said she needed to swing by the old apartment to grab some documents. I waited in the car while the rain drummed on the windshield. Her phone kept lighting up. I happened to see the ex's name, followed by long lines of text. She came back down with red eyes. She said he was begging for one last conversation to close the past. She also said she needed another sum to pay a fee on the old lease so things could truly end. I listened, and the rescue light switched on again. I wired the money, convinced this was the final checkpoint. The very next day, another reason appeared. She needed to change her number, to put down a deposit on a place of her own, to cover a late fee. Each time it was for closing the past. One Friday night, she texted one more reason, one more payment to finish it for good. I looked at my bank balance and sighed. I asked to meet at the cafe where we'd first talked. Seattle was still raining. I said I was tired and needed boundaries. I proposed concrete markers, cut off contact with the ex under a clear commitment. She went quiet, then said I was pressuring her. A day later, her messages slowed. The relationship thinned out like a latte left sitting too long. The money I'd spent didn't come back. Neither did my feelings. I lost a chunk of the savings I'd set aside to fly home and visit family in the summer. I had to make up my schedule with long days. Gradually, I saw my trap clearly. I had used rescuing to prove my worth, and because I was afraid of losing that role, I poured in more time and money. The more I poured, the harder it became to stop, because stopping meant admitting I'd been wrong. I also saw something else. I was helping in a way that made someone dependent rather than encouraging them to stand on their own. What I thought was compassion was really stretching out a victim story. I've learned that compassion has to come with boundaries. Don't rescue to prove your worth. From now on, if I meet someone in crisis, I'll help in measured ways and against specific, verifiable checkpoints. I'm setting one simple condition, too. If the story keeps looping victimhood and dependency, if contact with the ex doesn't stop, if the plan to take responsibility doesn't move forward, I'll step away. I'm not rescuing to be loved. I'll love by respecting boundaries. I'll stay only where consistent action shows up, not where promises are empty. "10. I thought she loved me when she said sweet things." Sunday mornings at the farmer's market on the edge of downtown Los Angeles are always bustling. I usually stop by the tiny coffee stand set up under a tree where a barista with her hair tied high works as fast as the wind. The first time she asked my name. The next time she already remembered my drink, an oat milk latte with a dusting of cinnamon. She called me cute little names like Buddy and Sweetie. When she handed me the cup, she said I seemed likable. That afternoon, the stand's Instagram posted a thank you to regulars, and I got a separate message too, basically thanking me for the support and hoping to see me next week. My heart sped up when I read it. A neat conclusion popped into my head. She had a special soft spot for me. I know now that I exaggerated. But back then, I lived alone in an apartment near Koreatown. Go to work, come home, Netflix at night, farmer's market on the weekends. For months, no one said my name except co-workers at the office. So when someone remembered my drink and messaged me to say I was nice, I rushed to decide it was genuine love. That was my shortcut of a thought. Warmth equals intimacy. The next week, she said she was getting ready for the launch of a craft coffee brand in Santa Barbara. She'd be helping as a collaborator, setting up and doing demo pours. Fired up, I booked a room for a night in Goleta, mapped out a drive up the 101, figured I'd hit the beach for the weekend and cheer on the person I liked. That night, I even Googled flower shops near the venue and picked out a bundle of sunflowers. Around 10, I texted to ask if she needed a ride, since I was planning to go anyway. She replied with a polite thank you and said if I was free, it'd be great if I could haul a few boxes of paper cups. Saturday morning, I woke early, filled up, turned on music, and drove for more than 2 hours. When I arrived, I walked in with the flowers and she beamed. In my head, I narrated a story. If someone asks you for a lot, it's because they trust you. If they trust you a lot, it's because they like you. Throughout the event, she moved like a whirlwind, greeting guests, pouring samples, fielding questions. She introduced me to a few people as a friend who'd come to help from LA. I heard the word friend and interpreted it as something intimate, not just the ordinary kind. I carried a camera, shot photos and clips, changed angles, crouched to keep extension cords from tripping anyone. At lunch, she pressed a box of sandwiches into my hands and said I was a lifesaver. That pumped me up even more. My brain kept tallying points like a loyalty app. Every compliment earned a star, and enough stars could be redeemed for a heart. By late afternoon, the event wrapped smoothly. I stayed an extra hour to help clean up. When everything was tidy, she thanked the whole team and said she couldn't have made it without everyone. She turned to me, tapped my elbow lightly, and thanked me for hauling gear and for all the good photos. Half joking, half serious, I said that when I stopped by the market next week, I'd like to take her to dinner. She gave a small smile and said she'd be busy sorting out her schedule this week. We could talk another time. Then she hurried off to return bins and take a call from the organizers. I stood by the car holding the bouquet I hadn't had a chance to give because we'd been busy all day. Back at the hotel that night, I texted to ask if she'd gotten home safe. The message showed as sent, but I never got a reply. The next morning, I sent a few color-graded photos. I waited quietly. By Monday night, there was still nothing. On Tuesday, I sent something very normal. Hope your day's good. Tell me if you need more photos. No reply. I figured maybe she was busy. But by the weekend, the Stan's account posted a story thanking everyone who came to Santa Barbara and tagged the whole list of collaborators. Just not me, because I wasn't one. And those sweet words from before were professional habits and a strategy to keep regulars. You ask what I learned from this stretch. I realized I was starved for attention and used the sweet talk of someone in service to fill that gap. It's like going to the grocery store hungry when everything looks delicious. I also realized I tend to mix up signals. Remembering my order and saying I'm nice are job skills, not a confession of love. Asking me to haul boxes was because I had a car and goodwill, not because she wanted to be close to me. The real climax was sitting in the parking lot staring at quiet notifications and for the first time saying to myself, turns out I just played the volunteer. The letdown wasn't because she did anything wrong, but because I invested like a boyfriend when the relationship had never been established. I turned myself into the driver, the porter, the photographer, and then demanded a romantic reward without any agreement. The consequences were obvious: money spent, time spent, and a thread of embarrassment woven into every time I walked past that coffee stand afterwards. I still stopped by, the coffee was good, but I stood farther away, placed my order, and then waited outside, no more embroidering the story in my head.